See you, man.
All right, my next guest voted no on this whole short-term spending thing, one of just 9 U.S. senators to do so. Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul says the cuts just do not go far enough. Senator, good to have you. You have been advocating much steeper cuts, I believe, by last count, $500 billion worth. And as you pointed out at the time with me, Senator, we would still be looking at $1 trillion deficit even with those. But you've found very little support even among some of your Republican colleagues. How do you feel now?
Well, I guess I'm a little disappointed. The last George Bush deficit was $500 billion. Now we're up to $1.65 trillion. And now the Republican alternative, this short-term spending, would be the equivalent of a $1.5 trillion debt or deficit for the year. So they're really statistically about the same, and I don't think either one of them avoids the fiscal nightmare or the fiscal problems that we're going to have and accumulates too much debt. We've got to be much bolder. We're going to be presenting a 5-year plan that will balance the budget over 5 years. We're going to be presenting a balanced budget amendment. I think the American people want a plan. They want us to be for something distinctly different than the Democrats who are just wanting to add debt. I don't think they want incremental change. They want something that really would be substantial and significant change.
But, Senator, aren't you running into more headwinds with fellow Republicans?
Well, it's a little bit of both, and I think the Republicans want to do the right thing, but I think we have to be more bold. I think basically the president has abdicated leadership on this issue. He's doing nothing but adding and drowning our country in debt, and Republicans need to stand up and say, not we're this much better than the president, but that we're this much better than the president, that we believe in a balanced budget, not only in a balanced budget amendment, but here's our plan. We will balance the budget over 5 years, and here's how we do it. That's the boldness that the American people want. They want something distinctly different. They don't want something marginally different.
But, marginal is what we get, Senator. And I said, even after we had you on last time, there are a lot of people saying, oh, his cuts are too severe and all of this. And what I admired about you then, I'll say now, is at least you're putting numbers up on the table. You're giving something for people to debate, and I don't see that out of colleagues on either side. So I commend that. I guess what I'm wondering, though, is if you're kind of a lone wolf here, and that 2 weeks from now, I know you would probably reject such an attempt as you did today. 2 weeks from now, we'll be offering another 2-week extension, limping along $4 billion, presumably in cuts at a time, when that's what we're spending in interest costs every day. And this problem just gets worse every day. What do you say?
My fear is that if we do these incremental changes and we don't dramatically reform the government process, the budgetary process, that both sides, Republican and Democrat, lead us towards a fiscal crisis. I think we could face something like what happened to Greece, what is facing Japan, and what is facing most of the civilized world now is that we're way overspent, and it's going to take dramatic changes. It's going to take bold leadership, and I don't think we're seeing that, and we're going to try to inject into the debate and see if we can influence the debate in saying we have to balance our budget. Here's how we do it. We have to have a plan, not a 10-year plan or a 60-year plan. It has to be within the terms of someone's office. Someone has to step up and take responsibility for this debt.
But, no offense, you're getting to be a skunk at your own picnic. I thought of your colleague, Mitch McConnell, what he had to say about this stopgap measure on today. This is from Mitch McConnell.
It is the first time I can recall in the time that I've been here, our actually cutting spending on an appropriation bill.
What do you think of that?
Well, I just think we have to put in perspective, that our annual deficit has tripled, and now we're going to nibble away with a 6% cut in the deficit when we tripled the deficit over the last few years. It's not enough. If it were enough to just get a little bit better than the Democrats, I'd be content and go home to Kentucky. What my fear is that when you add $1.5 trillion, and that's our alternative, that it's not enough and that we will still face a debt crisis in our country if we keep accumulating trillions of dollars of debt every year. We have to have a plan. We have to have a plan that balances a budget. Tell the American people we're different than the Democrats. Not this much different, but we're dramatically different. Otherwise, they're going to lose faith in us. The Tea Party said to me, balance the budget. They didn't say to me, come up here and had a little bit less than the Democrats are doing.
So let me ask you, have you lost faith in the system? I've asked a lot of wide-eyed, optimistic, very gung-ho Tea Partiers who made their way to Washington in the great rampage last November. Once getting there, are you frustrated by the process, the system, the way things are done?
Well, I guess I recognize coming into this that you don't always get what you want, and you don't get it immediately either. But I'll tell you that there's a disconnect. When I go to a Tea Party, when we had our Tea Party caucus, and I told them $500 billion in cuts, they said, well, that's a good start, but that's not enough to balance the budget. When I take 500 to official Washington, they say, oh my goodness, they throw up their hands and say, we could never do that in 1 year. So it's a disconnect. The public is ready for significant cuts. The public is also ready to get around sort of the president who's not leading. They want leadership in Washington. We're also going to talk about Social Security reform next week, how we fix it. We're going to talk about what would have to be done to the age, whether we have to means test the expenditures from Social Security. We are going to talk about the answers until they either get tired of me and send me home, or we start waking up and trying to fix the problems we have up here.
Well, you're a good pest. All right, Senator, thank you very much. Good seeing you again.
Thanks, Neil.
Rand Paul. Well, the days of collective